Good afternoon. This is Dottie with the Tollway, and we're going to talk about covering up double imaging because it's always an issue when you have an image on the page and you want to not see that image when you do your paper toll. So what we're going to do with this is, my image concern is I want to be able to raise his horn up a little bit above his body and off of the back. So in order to accomplish that, let's see if I can do that. Okay. What I'm going to do is I have cut another piece out of another print, which encompasses a little bit of the horn. Okay, and what it's going to do is, the thing to remember when you're doing shadow box art, 1/4 of an inch of the print all the way around drops into what's called the rabbet on the back of the frame. And the rabbet is the recessed part on the back of any frame that your art drops into so that you can secure it in the box itself. So if you look at, I have a shadow box here, you can see there's a recess here, and it's approximately 1/4 of an inch wide and 1/4 of an inch deep. Okay, so your art will slide into this recess. So when you go to put art in the back of a frame, if you have anything that you have built up three-dimensionally, it has to be above this 1/4 inch, or when you go to put it in, it will crush it. When you go to secure it in the back of your frame or your shadow box, and you can't have raised parts that go into this rabbet. So what I have done is I have taken a ruler and marked my 1/4 inch lines here. So in order to be able to raise the horn, I need to be able to get this front edge covered up. So if I take this print and line it up with my 1/4 inch marks that I did with my ruler, then you can see, let me see if I can peel it up. You can see that a good portion of this, because the original horn comes to here. So I've got that 1/4 inch that I can play with, that I don't have a double image. So I'm going to show you how you can attach a large piece like this to do your cover-up, because you can't use glue, you have to use silicone. And the reasoning behind that is glue is water-based, and as it dries, your paper will wrinkle. But because silicone is an oil-based surface, as long as you get a good contact on it, it won't cause any wrinkling when it dries. So in order to do this, I'm going to show you how I do it. You're going to need a piece of wax paper that will accommodate the piece that you're going to glue down. I'm going to turn this upside down so that it's that way. And then what I do, what I've done for years with all of my old credit cards is, and you can do library cards, any plastic card will work. But my credit cards, I just cut a big V in them, and then I use these to spread my silicone. So what you're going to do is you need to get a fair amount of silicone distributed on the paper so that you can take your credit card and spread it. So I usually put more silicone toward the end, because I'm going to work this piece all the way to the other end, or whatever end you're going to put it on, put a little more silicone there. If you don't have enough, you can always add it. If you have too much, you can always sweep it off the end. A little tip for you with silicone. Silicone is oil-based and it will dry out. So if you take your silicone and push a little bit of that up, about that much, and then you take your lid, which has a small recess in it, and you push that silicone into the lid and then tighten it down, it will push all of the air out so that your silicone doesn't dry up into the tube where you can't get to it to get it out. Okay, so that's my tip for that. So now I'm going to take my credit card and I'm going to slide this down a little bit so it's easier for me to reach. And then I'm going to pick up some of the silicone on the edge of my card, and then I'm going to start moving it. You need to make sure that you go off the edge a little bit so that you do get silicone all the way to the edge of this piece, because if you don't, it won't stick. So I usually go at an angle down the edges and along the sides, and then I'll come back and pull out very lightly all of the little ridges that pulling the silicone down creates. Now I haven't done this top corner, so I'm going to turn my card this way and brush it off the edge. And then I'm going to come down here and make sure that I've got all the edges covered. And then I'm going to push it up a little bit. And you're going to get silicone on your fingers, but it wipes off. You want to try to keep the piece so that it doesn't move, because you don't want to rub silicone off on the front. So when you do this, the silicone will, at the edge of the card, will create little ridges. And what you want to do is, you want to make sure that you smooth those out as much as you can, because those are places that have a potential to ooze when you use your brayer over the top of it with a paper towel. So I need a little more silicone here. It's a little dry. You don't want it completely dry, but you don't want big puddles of silicone. So if you get the right light, you can see that it's shiny all the way to the edge of the piece. If it's not shiny, you don't have enough silicone. You have a dry spot. But light will reflect and you can see that you got all the edges. Now, what you can do with your card is, once you've finished, if you take a disinfectant wipe, all that silicone will come off. And then you can use your card another day. So because this is oil-based, you have a couple of minutes to get this transferred. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this out of the way, and I'm going to move my print back in. And I'm sorry, my light's a little off today. Now I'm going to peel this off of my piece of wax paper, and I'm going to hold on to this, and I'm going to match up my 1/4 inch lines that I have drawn, because I know that that's where my 1/4 inch is. And then I'm going to put this down. Oops, we're a little crooked. If you get it on and it's a little crooked, you can peel it up because it is silicone, and then replace it. So I was a little crooked because my edge was off. So we're going to do this yet again here. Okay, now that it's lightly placed, because I want to make sure that it gets good adherence, I'm going to take my piece of paper towel and I'm going to run the brayer toward the edge and then up the edge. Because what I'm doing is I am pushing the silicone so that it attaches to both the piece I'm laying down and the base print. Okay, then I'm going to turn it over and do the same thing at the top. And you want to run it a couple of times, and I usually run it different directions, so I'm sure that anything that's left, if there's a ridge of silicone somewhere, I want to brush it off. I want to run it off with the brayer. And I'm going to run this along the edge. Now, just to show you what this has done. So now if I put my guy back where he belongs, no, there's another one that goes over here. I am not going to have a double image, because when I put the saxophone back that has all of this excess stuff on the edge that this piece doesn't have, it's going to cover up. And his head is 1/4 inch into the piece I put down. So that way, if I raise him a little bit, you're not going to see his head because I've got 1/4 of an inch of this background underneath the print. And so then when I put this guy, when I do the other side, it does the same thing because, here, let me see if I can find just him cut out somewhere. Hold on, here we go. Okay, so like this is a piece. So if I match this, okay, I can pick this up, and his head and his shoulder are, his head is, if you look here, the head is, it's 1/4 of an inch this way now because I pushed everything under. So if I raise this, I'm going to get very little double image anymore, which is the goal because you want to be able to pick this guy up. And I will probably do the same thing with this guy that I did with my other jazz guy. I will probably put something under him like that. This one's a little high. I may have to cut it down a little bit. But you can do this so that you can raise all these pieces up and give them a more realistic look. But this is a little high for this guy. So I'll come back and trim off probably 1/4 of an inch off of both sides. And then that will flatten this out a little bit so he's not so high up. Because again, this is a big piece. I don't want to wire this whole thing. So I will probably put wire on the back where his head is, and I will put at least one piece down the saxophone itself, so that way I can bend the part of the saxophone that I want up if I want to raise it, and that way I can curve his head with the wire and it'll stay curved so it looks more like a head. And you could do the same thing with this piece because I have eliminated 1/4 of an inch. See, this is, if you look, this is way back to here. So I could raise this 1/4 of an inch and there would be no double image because I have ended that by putting this little piece down that covered up 1/4 of an inch of this whole thing. And it covered up his hand and it covered up everything. So I could raise this when I put the piece down with a piece of wire and it will stay up and it'll look good. Okay. Now I just wanted to show you how to get silicone on the back of a big piece if you're trying to cover up a double image on your print. I'm sorry about the glare. I haven't figured out how to do that yet in here. But if you look here, you can see that his head is covered up with my piece. So when I put this piece down, I have that 1/4 inch that I can raise his head off the background, which I like better. I like to be able to get some of these main pieces off of the background. Okay, thank you very much.